Toxic people are not your problem. Your access control is. I spent years in the United States Secret Service. Our job wasn't to change bad people. It wasn't to convince threats to be kinder, more evolved, more emotionally regulated. No, our job was simple. How access, control proximity, control exposure. That's it. You don't fix the threat, you manage the distance. But in your personal life, you do the opposite. You over-explain, you overgive, you overanalyze, you let them in again, and again, and again. Then you say, why does this keep happening to me? If every bar I go to, I get in a fight, is it the bar idea? I learned this early on the job. I was assigned to a protective detail for a foreign head of state visiting the US. We had intelligence that a particular activist group might try to disrupt the event. Nothing violent, just aggressive, loud, confrontational. My job wasn't to debate them. It wasn't to explain the president's policy. It wasn't to educate them on civility. It was to assess distance and move the protectee accordingly. Threat doesn't disappear because you reason with it. It disappears because you reposition yourself. Write that down. Most of you try to win arguments with toxic people. You try to explain how you feel. I feel disrespected. I feel hurt. I think you're being unfair. Facts win. Feelings don't. And here's the hard truth. Toxic people don't care how you feel. They care what they can extract. Attention, control, reaction, energy. With energy are emotional pickpockets. I've interrogated people who committed serious crimes. You know what surprised most civilians? How normal they looked, how reasonable they sounded, how calm they appeared. Predators don't walk around with signs. They watch for easy prey, and easy prey isn't weak. It's distracted, it's overloaded, it's emotionally reactive. Which brings me to your bathtub. Imagine your cognitive and emotional capacity is a bathtub. Every responsibility, every worry, every unresolved argument is water pouring in. At some point it overflows. When it overflows, you lose clarity, you lose discernment, you lose power. Toxic people love a full bathtub. They love when you're overwhelmed because now you can't see clearly. Now you second guess yourself. Now you tolerate what you normally wouldn't. Stop adding water. Take things out. When I was working protection during a high-pressure political season, the schedule was insane. 18-hour days, constant travel, threat assessments changing by the hour. If I brought every minor irritation home in my head, I'd drown. So I started doing something simple. Before I went to bed, I'd ask, is this actionable or not? If yes, write it down, handle it tomorrow. If no, drain it. You can't protect yourself if you're mentally flooded. Now let's talk about the word toxic. It's overused, dramatic, emotional, but strip it down. Toxic simply means exposure causes harm. Some people are like carbon monoxide. You don't see it. You don't smell it. But the longer you stay, the weaker you get. Here's what most people get wrong. They think dealing with toxic people is about confrontation. It's not confrontation. It's calibration, not emotional reaction, strategic response. And you always have a choice. Even when it feels like you don't, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's inconvenient, you have a choice, you have a choice, you have a choice. I remember interviewing a woman who kept going back to a manipulative partner. She told me, I don't have a choice. He knows how to push my buttons. I asked her one question. Who installed the buttons? Silence. Nobody forces you to keep the same emotional wiring. Nobody forces you to keep answering the phone. Nobody forces you to stay in the room. You are more capable than you think. Far more capable. But capability requires ownership. So before we go any further, I want you to ask yourself something uncomfortable. Are the toxic people in your life actually overpowering you, or are you over-permitting them? Because once you see the difference, everything changes. Toxic people don't hunt strength. They hunt access. Let me explain something most people misunderstand about predators, and I use that word intentionally. Not everyone toxic is a criminal. Not everyone is violent, but the psychology overlaps. Predators conserve energy. In the Secret Service, we studied behavioral patterns constantly. A threat actor doesn't usually go after the hardest target. They don't charge the strongest agent. They look for the soft edge, the distracted one, the one scanning their phone instead of the room. Easy prey isn't weak. It's unaware. I saw this firsthand during a protective advance overseas. We were doing site work at a hotel before a presidential visit. Everyone was busy, radios crackling, logistics, schedules, chaos. And one guy, hotel staff, kept hovering, just a little too curious. Not aggressive, not loud, just present. He didn't approach the most senior agent. He didn't approach the most alert one. He approached the young agent who was overloaded. New to the detail, trying to prove himself, cognitive bathtub overflowing. That's who predators test. Why does that matter to you? Because toxic people do the same thing socially and emotionally. They test your boundaries in small ways. A joke that goes too far, a favor that's inconvenient, a subtle disrespect. And what do? You rationalize. They didn't mean it. They're just stressed. It's not a big deal. You know what that signals. Access granted. Access granted. Access granted. I once interrogated a fraud suspect who'd manipulated elderly victims for years. I asked him how he chose them. He said, I just start talking. The ones who overshare, who apologize a lot, who don't interrupt me, those are the ones. Think about that. He wasn't looking for intelligence level. He wasn't looking for wealth. He was looking for compliance signals. Oversharing, over-apologizing, over-explaining. If every interaction requires you to justify your boundaries, you've already lost leverage. And here's the part people hate hearing. You train people how to treat you, not with lectures, with tolerance. I had a friend years ago, strong, capable, successful, who kept dating the same personality type, controlling, critical, charming in public, cutting in private. After the third relationship imploded, she asked me, why do I attract this? I asked her, at what point did you leave the first time they disrespected you? Silence. She negotiated with the iceberg. And that's the next metaphor you need to understand. People are icebergs. You see 10%, polite, funny, ambitious, attentive. But 90% is under the surface, insecurity, entitlement, trauma, narcissism, generosity, kindness, whatever is there is there. You don't get to chisel the iceberg into a better shape. You adapt to it. Or you sail away. They try to heat the ocean. They think love, logic, patience, sacrifice will reshape someone's core nature. Who are you to impose that river? And why are you so arrogant to believe you can have it? That's not empowerment, that's ego. Accept people as they are, not as they could be, not as they were in the beginning, as they are. If they gossip constantly, that's who they are. If they explode under stress, that's who they are. If they play victim in every story, that's who they are. You don't need more data. You need acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean approval, it means clarity. And clarity gives you power. When I worked polygraphs, people thought the machine was magic. It wasn't. The real power was baseline behavior. You observe someone long enough, you know what's normal for them? You already have a baseline on the toxic people in your life. You already have a baseline on the toxic people in your life. You know who lies. You know who drains you. You're not confused. You're conflicted. And conflict feels safer than change. In the next segment, I'm going to show you the single biggest mistake people make when trying to handle toxic personalities and why your instinct to confront them head-on often backfires. Here's the biggest mistake people make with toxic personalities. They go to war emotionally. They confront, they explode. They unload years of frustration in one dramatic speech. They think, this is it. I'm finally standing up for myself. No, you're giving them exactly what they want. Reaction. I learned this during an interrogation early in my career. I was young, confident, ready to prove myself. The subject was a repeat offender, manipulative, arrogant, used to controlling conversations. Within minutes, he started provoking me. Subtle insults, questioning my competence, smirking. He wanted me off balance. And for a split second, it worked. I felt my temperature rise, my breathing change. My cognitive bathtub filling fast. If I reacted emotionally, I would lose control of the room. So I did the opposite. I slowed down. I lowered my voice. I removed energy. You know what happened. He got uncomfortable. Toxic personalities feed on chaos. They thrive in emotional storms. They are excellent swimmers in rough water. But calm water, silence, controlled responses, they drown. Most people try to overpower toxic individuals. That's ego. You know, the smarter move is indifference. Not passive-aggressive silence. Not sulking. Not dramatic exits. Strategic detachment. Let me give you a real-life example outside of work. A family member of mine, extended family, had a habit of criticizing everything. Career choices, relationships. My appearance, always disguised as just being honest. For years, I'd push back, debate, defend. Then one day I stopped. She'd say something cutting. I'd respond, that's one perspective, and move on. No defense, no explanation, no escalation. You could see it in her face. Confusion, frustration, loss of leverage, because here's the truth. You can't manipulate someone who doesn't need your approval. You can't destabilize someone who doesn't chase validation. You can't control someone who is comfortable walking away. Say that again. You can't manipulate someone who doesn't need your approval. This is where people get it twisted. They think strength is loud. It's not loud. It's steady. When I was on a protective detail during a heated political rally, protesters were screaming inches from us, insults, accusations, personal attacks. You know what we didn't do? We didn't argue. We didn't argue. We didn't defend policy. We held position. That's power. Holding position. Toxic people test your position constantly with. They push. They prod. They provoke. Why diving? Because if they can get you to move emotionally, they can move you behaviorally. And once they move you behaviorally, they control the dynamic. I consulted once with a corporate executive dealing with a narcissistic colleague. This colleague would publicly challenge him in meetings, not on substance, but tone, undermining, smirking, creating doubt, the executive's instinct, shut him down aggressively. I told him, win with facts, no adjectives, no emotion. Next meeting, when challenged, he calmly said, show me the data that contradicts this, and waited, silence. Facts win. I feel doesn't win. I think doesn't win. Data wins. Calm wins. Restraint wins. Toxic people expect you to fight emotionally. When you don't, they have no script. But here's the catch. Strategic detachment only works if you've already accepted the iceberg. If you're still hoping they'll change, you will react. If you're still trying to prove your worth, you will react. If you're still trying to prove your worth, you will react. If you're still seeking closure from someone incapable of giving it, you will react. You have to decide. Is this a short-term ego win or a long-term peace win? Short-term friend, long-term enemy. Emotional explosion feels powerful in the moment, but it ties you deeper into the dynamic. Peace feels boring. Peace feels anticlimactic. Peace feels quiet. But peace is power. In the next segment, we're going to talk about boundaries. Real boundaries, not the Instagram version. And I'll show you why most people don't actually have weak boundaries. They have weak enforcement. Let's talk about boundaries, not the inspirational quote version, not the if you can't handle me at my worst version. Real boundaries, here's the truth. Most people don't have weak boundaries. They have weak enforcement. There's a difference. A boundary is a statement. Enforcement is behavior. And behavior is what people respect. When I worked protection, perimeters were everything. There's an outer perimeter, inner perimeter. Hard stop zones. If someone crossed the line, we didn't have a meeting about it. We didn't process it emotionally. We acted. Not dramatic. Not angry. Just consistent. I remember one event where a well-dressed donor, important, connected, kept inching closer to the protectee during a photo line. Technically polite, smiling, but violating space. First warning, sir, please stay behind the line. He was physically repositioned. No debate, no apology tour. Line means line. Now translate that into your life. You say, I don't tolerate disrespect. But when they disrespect you, you explain yourself. You say, I value my time. But when they cancel last minute for the 5th time, you reschedule. You say, I won't engage in gossip. But when they start tearing someone apart, you stay and listen. That's not a boundary. That's a suggestion. And suggestions don't protect you. Enforcement feels uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to being the peacekeeper, the fixer, the rescuer. Let me tell you about the drowning rescuer. There's a reason lifeguards are trained a certain way. If someone is panicking and drowning, they will grab you, claw you, push you under to get air. If you approach incorrectly, you both drown. So what does a trained rescuer do? They approach from behind, they maintain control, and if necessary, they create distance before re-engaging. Some of you jump into emotional chaos with no training. You think your love will calm them. You think your love will stabilize them. You think your sacrifice will fix them. Who are you to impose change on someone who doesn't want it? Why are you volunteering to drown? I consulted once with a woman whose adult brother constantly borrowed money, never repaid it. Always a crisis, always urgent. She'd say, I have to help him. He's family. I asked her, are you helping him? Or are you helping yourself feel needed? Silence. Sometimes your boundary problem is an identity problem, If you see yourself as the strong one, the savior, the responsible one, toxic people will find you because they need someone to stabilize their instability. But here's the brutal truth. Stabilizing chaos long-term destabilizes you. You cannot be the permanent regulator of someone else's emotional state. You will burn out. You will resent them. And eventually you will explode. Weak enforcement often comes from fear, but fear of being disliked, fear of being alone, fear of conflict. But let me ask you something. Is keeping someone who disrespects you really connection? Or is it just proximity? You're not that special, and I mean that in the most freeing way possible. Your pain isn't unique. Your struggle isn't unique. Millions of people have enforced boundaries and survived the discomfort. You will too. Shoes by the bed. That's what I call tiny steps. When I trained for physically demanding assignments, I didn't think about the full marathon. I thought about the next tree, the next block, the next checkpoint. You don't need to overhaul your entire social circle tomorrow. Just enforce one small boundary. Don't answer the late night text. End the call when the conversation turns toxic. Say that doesn't work for me and stop talking. No over-explaining, no justifying, no apologizing. Say it once, then behave accordingly. Because boundaries without behavior are theater. And in the next segment, we're going to get uncomfortable. We're going to talk about why you might be subconsciously choosing toxic people and how your past wiring plays a role in the patterns you keep repeating. Now we're going to get uncomfortable because if toxic people keep showing up in your life, at some point you have to ask, is it coincidence or is it pattern? I've interviewed thousands of people in my career, victims, offenders, witnesses, leaders, and here's what I learned. Patterns don't lie. Stories change. Emotions fluctuate. Narratives evolve. Patterns don't. If every boss you've had is crazy, if every partner you've had is narcissistic, if every friend eventually betrays you, at some point you have to ask the hard question, what am I tolerating early 5 already? Or even harder, what feels familiar? Familiar doesn't mean healthy. Familiar means predictable. I worked a case years ago involving a young woman who repeatedly got involved with controlling men. On paper, she was strong, educated, financially independent, but when we dug into her background, something clicked. She grew up in a house where love was conditional. Approval came from performance. Affection came after compliance. So when a man was controlling, it didn't feel foreign, it felt like home. And the brain loves home, even if home was chaos. You're not broken, you're patterned. You are far more capable than you think. But capability requires awareness, and awareness requires honesty. Let me give you another example. During polygraph work, we would establish a baseline how someone breathes when calm, how answer neutral questions. That baseline tells you everything. What's your emotional baseline? Do you feel most connected when you're proving yourself? Do you feel most in love when there's drama? Do you feel most valuable when someone needs saving? Be careful. But chaos can feel like chemistry. Intensity can feel like intimacy. But intensity is not intimacy. Drama is not depth. Adrenaline is not attachment. I had a consultation with a high-performing executive who kept partnering with volatile co-founders. Brilliant, charismatic, explosive. Every time it ended the same way, betrayal, lawsuits, emotional fallout. I asked him, what did your childhood feel like? He laughed. Loud, competitive. You had to fight to be heard. Exactly. His nervous system equated volatility with vitality. Calm felt boring. Predictable felt weak. So he kept choosing high-drama personalities because it activated what he knew. If you grew up earning love, you'll date someone who makes you earn it. If you grew up walking on eggshells, you'll tolerate eggshell environments. If you grew up rescuing a parent emotionally, you'll rescue partners, and then you'll call them toxic. Listen carefully. Some people are objectively toxic, but sometimes you're just reenacting unfinished business. This isn't about blaming you, it's about freeing you. You always have a choice, even when it feels like you don't. But you can't choose differently if you don't see clearly, and clarity requires draining the bathtub. Stop replaying the past like it's a courtroom case you need to win. You don't need to fully understand every childhood moment to move forward. You need to accept reality. This is my pattern. Then decide, keep it or break it. I had to do this myself. Early in my career, I overextended, said yes to everything, took on extra assignments, stayed late, tried to prove I deserved my seat at the table. Why? Because part of me believed I had to outperform to belong. That pattern works short-term, long-term enemy. Burnout, resentment, exhaustion. I had to recalibrate. Not by blaming my past, by owning my present. Here's your action step. Write down your last 3 toxic dynamics. Not the story, the pattern it. Were you over-giving, over-explaining? Be ruthless facts, not feelings. Because in the next segment, we are going to talk about emotional regulation, how to keep your nervous system steady when a toxic person tries to pull you into their storm. Toxic people don't win because they're smarter. They win because they're better at emotional chaos. If I can spike your nervous system, I control you. That's not philosophy. That's physiology. When your heart rate jumps, when your breathing shortens, when your brain goes into threat mode, your prefrontal cortex goes offline. That's the part responsible for logic, restraint, strategy. And reactive people are predictable. In protection work, emotional regulation wasn't optional. It was survival. I remember one moment clearly. Large crowd, high tension. Intelligence suggested a possible disruption, nothing confirmed, just enough uncertainty to spike adrenaline. Suddenly, someone in the crowd lunged forward. For a split second, time slowed. You know what saved us. Dust, not strength. Breathing. Slow inhale, slow exhale. Tunnel vision widened. We assessed before reacting, turned out to be a drunken supporter trying to get a selfie. If we'd overreacted emotionally, we would have escalated unnecessarily. That's what toxic people do in your life. They lunge, not physically, emotionally, an accusation, a guilt trip, a dramatic ultimatum. If you react instantly, you've surrendered control. Here's a rule I teach executives and agents alike. Delay is power. You do not need to respond immediately. You do not need to answer every text. You do not need to settle every argument in real time. Silence is a tool. I once interrogated a suspect who thrived on verbal dominance. Fast talker, interrupt, overwhelms the room with words. So I did something simple. I let him talk. Then I paused. Long silence. People hate silence, especially manipulators. They rush to fill it. And when they rush, they slip. The same works in personal dynamics. Toxic person says, I guess you just don't care about me. Instead of defending, pause. I'll look at them. Let it sit. Then respond calmly. That's your interpretation. No emotional flood. You're not obligated to fix every narrative someone creates about you. Remember this? Not everything deserves a reaction. Not everything deserves a response. 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 Not everything deserves your energy. Your bathtub can't afford it. Most of you are emotionally exhausted, not because life is impossible, but because you're reacting to everything. Every comment, every tone shift. That's cognitive overload. And overloaded people make weak decisions. I had a colleague early in my career who was brilliant, but volatile. If someone challenged him even mildly, he'd snap. Smart guy. And predictable is dangerous. In security work, predictability is a vulnerability. In personal life, it's the same. If a toxic person knows exactly how to trigger you, they own the remote control. Why are you handing it to them, Bayud? You always have a choice, even when your body is activated, especially then. Here's a tactical tool. Name it internally. My heart rate is rising. I feel anger. I feel defensiveness. Labeling emotion reduces its intensity. Labeling emotion reduces its intensity. Labeling emotion reduces its intensity. It reactivates the rational brain. Then, choose your behavior, not based on emotion. Based on outcome. Ask yourself, what outcome do I want here, Ivy? To win the argument or to maintain peace of yours? Short-term ego win. Long-term peace win. Pick one. And if you can't regulate in the moment, but dream of yourself, I've walked out of rooms. I've ended calls mid-conversation. Not dramatically, not slamming doors. Just, we'll continue this later. Distance is not weakness. Distance is strategy. In the next segment, we're going to talk about the hardest decision of all, when to stay and when to walk away. Because not every toxic person needs to be cut off, but some absolutely do. Savi, now we get to the question everyone wants answered. When do you stay and when do you walk? Ivergy. Because not every difficult person is toxic, and not every toxic person needs to be eliminated. It's about becoming strategic. In protection work, we didn't evacuate at every disturbance. That would be chaos. We assessed, is this a manageable threat or is this escalating beyond control? You need the same framework in your life. First question, is the behavior occasional or is it a pattern? Everyone has bad days. Toxic people have bad patterns. If someone snaps once under stress and later takes accountability, that's human. If someone snaps repeatedly, blames you, minimizes it, and repeats it, that's character. Character is stable. Mood is temporary. With I once worked with a senior official who had a reputation for being harsh. People called him toxic, but here's what I noticed. He was demanding, yes, direct, yes, but consistent, and if he crossed a line, he owned it. That's not toxicity, that's intensity. Don't confuse discomfort with danger. Now let me tell you about a case that still stays with me. A woman married to a man who was emotionally degrading, not violent, not explosive, just constant erosion. Daily criticism, public jokes at her expense. When I asked her how long it had been happening, she said since the beginning. So I asked the hard question, why did you stay? She said because it wasn't bad enough to leave. That sentence is a trap. Not bad enough. You don't wait for the building to fully collapse before exiting. If the foundation is cracked and the engineer says it's unstable, you don't debate the weather forecast, you leave. Some toxic dynamics don't explode. They corrode, slowly, quietly, over years. Here's your second question. Does this person drain your capacity or expand it? After spending time with them, are you sharper or smaller, clearer or confused, energized or exhausted? Your nervous system keeps score even when your mind rationalizes. I had to make this decision personally once. There was someone in my extended circle, charismatic, influential, connected, being around them opened doors professionally. But every interaction left me unsettled. Subtle power plays, information twisted, stories reframed, not overt betrayal, just erosion. I had to ask myself, is this access worth the cost? Short-term gain, long-term compromise. I stepped back, quietly, no speech, no confrontation, just distance. Opportunities closed. Peace increased with you can't keep everyone. And you're not supposed to be careful who and what you let into your circle. Low vibration people don't just annoy you. They recalibrate you downward. You start tolerating more. You start excusing more. And here's the uncomfortable part. Sometimes the toxic person is family. Sometimes it's a sibling, a parent, a long-term friend. Walking away doesn't always mean dramatic no contact. Sometimes it means limited access. Outer perimeter instead of inner circle, information control, time limits, emotional distance. You don't owe everyone intimacy. You don't owe everyone access. You don't owe everyone your nervous system. Ask yourself this. If this person entered my life today, knowing what I know now, would I let them in? If the answer is no, you have your clarity. In the next segment, we're going to talk about something even more powerful than boundaries or distance, identity. Because the smartest way to deal with toxic people isn't just about them. It's about who you decide to become. Let's go deeper. The smartest way to deal with toxic people isn't a tactic. It's an identity shift. Because when your identity changes, your tolerance changes automatically. I've seen this over and over again. When I first entered federal law enforcement, I was young. One of the few women in certain rooms, I felt pressure to prove myself constantly. Strong, unshakable, unbothered. So when someone made a dismissive comment, I'd internalize it, replay it, overanalyze it. I wanted to win them over. Then something shifted. I stopped asking, how do I get them to respect me? And started asking, do they meet my standard? That's identity. When your internal bar rises, access narrows. You don't argue with children about adult standards. You don't negotiate with chaos about calm. You decide who you are, and that decision filters everything. I once consulted with a CEO who kept being undermined by a senior executive. Subtle power plays, strategic leaks, undercutting authority. We worked on communication tactics, boundaries, documentation. Nothing changed. You know what changed if identity. I asked him, who are you in this organization? He said, I'm trying to keep everyone happy. Wrong identity. That's a manager, not a leader. When he shifted to, I am responsible for the mission, not everyone's comfort, his behavior changed automatically. He stopped over-explaining, stopped defending every decision, stopped appeasing. The undermining behavior didn't disappear overnight, but it lost power because identity drives tolerance. If your identity is I'm the fixer, you'll attract broken dynamics. If your identity is I'm the strong one, you'll overcarry weak people. If your identity is I just want to be loved, you'll accept crumbs. Who are you? Ivory, not who do you want to be perceived as. Who are you when no one's clapping beer? There was a moment on a protective detail when a senior agent told me something that stuck. He said, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your level of training. Same applies here. Under stress, you don't rise to your aspirations. You fall to your identity. If you see yourself as someone who tolerates disrespect to avoid conflict, that's what you'll do. If you see yourself as someone who values peace over drama, you'll exit faster. Identity makes decisions easy. Without identity, every decision feels like a debate. You argue with yourself. Favors. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe I should try harder. That's confusion. Clarity eliminates negotiation. Let me be blunt. You are not obligated to stay accessible to people who consistently diminish you. You are not obligated to convince anyone of your worth. You are not obligated to carry someone else's emotional instability. Say it again. You are not obligated. Your value is not determined by who tolerates you. It's determined by who you tolerate. And here's something freeing. You're not that special. Your pain isn't unique. Millions of people have had to outgrow circles, outgrow dynamics, outgrow identities, and they survived. So will you? In the next segment, we're going to bring all of this together into a clear framework, a step-by-step way to assess, respond, and protect yourself from toxic personalities without becoming cold, bitter, or isolated. All right, time to put it all together. Dealing with toxic people isn't about confrontation. It's not about proving yourself. It's not about being nice or heroic. It's about control, access, boundaries, identity, and mental energy. Here's the framework I've taught executives, law enforcement, and clients for years. Step by step, no fluff, no excuses. Step 1, assess the iceberg. Who is this person really? Not what they show you, not what they claim, not what they used to be. What they are, look beneath the surface. Patterns, not moods. Facts, not feelings. I remember a White House detail. A staffer would act helpful in meetings, charming, attentive. But off camera, sabotage, leaks, manipulations. We didn't respond emotionally, we assessed. Iceberg, patterns. Then decided proximity. Step 2, drain your bathtub. Before you engage, make sure your cognitive and emotional load isn't full. If your mental bathtub is overflowing, you will react. You will rationalize. You will tolerate. Empty first, remove the extra water. Prioritize your energy. Step 3, name the behavior. Don't absorb it. Anger rising, manipulation detected. This is the pattern. Labeling reduces intensity and keeps your prefrontal cortex online. Observing, reacting. Step 4, enforce boundaries consistently. Boundaries are useless without enforcement. If you say, I don't tolerate disrespect, then when someone crosses it, you act. Not emotionally, not aggressively, just consistent. End the conversation. Step away. Limit access. Tiny steps. Shoes by the bed. I coached a client whose coworker constantly undermined her during meetings. She didn't explode. She didn't email HR right away. She documented, calmly addressed, and held her boundaries consistently. Within weeks, the power dynamic shifted not because she argued, because she enforced. Step 5, regulate your nervous system. Toxic people seek reaction, delay, pause, breathe. Name your emotion, then choose your response based on outcome, not feeling. Step 6, decide to stay or walk. Short-term ego win or long-term peace win. Pattern or mood, energy drain or energy expansion, family or stranger. This is brutal, but necessary. Some people aren't safe. Some people aren't worth the cost. Outer perimeter or complete exit. Pick consciously. Step 7, align with identity. Who are you? Not who you want them to think you are. Who are you when no one's watching? Your identity filters tolerance. Your identity determines instinctual response under stress. Own it. Internalize it. Let it guide behavior. Step 8, document and review. Keep a log of patterns, actions, reactions, outcomes. Data wins arguments, not I feel. Facts clarify. Facts empower. Stop debating feelings. Start observing reality. Step 9, remove. Don't negotiate. You can't change the iceberg. You can't heat the ocean. Adapt, distance, or leave. Protect your bathtub. Protect your nervous system. Protect your life. Step 10, iterate and protect your circle. Every month, assess proximity. Who adds energy? Who subtracts? Who triggers patterns you don't tolerate? Not everyone is replaceable, but some are unnecessary. Protect the inner circle fiercely. I live this on the job every day, from the president to the office intern, from high-stakes threats to subtle manipulations. Distance and clarity saved lives. Calm won every time. Strategic detachment was more powerful than force. And guess what? It works in life outside government too. The point, you always have a choice. You always have control. You always have the power to decide who, what, and how much you tolerate, even if it feels impossible, even if it feels uncomfortable. In the final segment, we'll make this practical, concrete, repeatable actions you can implement tomorrow to protect your energy, your mind, and your life from toxic people without guilt, drama, or resentment. Here's the payoff, the part you can act on tomorrow, the part that turns all the theory into armor, strategy, and freedom. Step 1, morning mental check-in. Before your phone, before emails, before anyone else's chaos, scan your bathtub. How full is it? Prioritize. Remove one unnecessary stressor immediately. Even small victories matter. The tiny faucet turn drains water before it floods. Shoes by the bed, one step at a time. Step 2, daily access audit. Ask yourself, who do I interact with today? Who drains me? Who elevates me? Decide proximity before energy is spent. Not every toxic pee. Rawson needs a dramatic confrontation. Sometimes outer perimeter, limited interaction, and strategic silence is enough. Step 3, label, don't absorb. When someone triggers you, name it. Manipulation, criticism, disrespect. Say it internally. Pause. Choose your response based on outcome, not feeling. If you respond emotionally, you've handed control away. Facts, not feelings. Facts, not feelings. Step 4, boundaries with enforcement. Say it once. Act consistently. No second chances for repeated patterns. Tiny steps. One phone call, one meeting, one conversation at a time. If someone violates your boundary, end it, step away, limit access, behavior enforces boundaries. Words without action. Theater. Whatever. Step 5, distance and perimeter. Sometimes the smartest move is outer perimeter. Sometimes complete exit. Some people erode you slowly like acid. Don't wait for destruction. Don't debate morality. Protect yourself. Protect your energy. Protect your bathtub. Your nervous system keeps score even when your brain rationalizes. Step 6, identity alignment. Ask, who am I today? Who do I want to be in this environment? Your identity filters tolerance automatically. If you see yourself as calm, strategic, unshakable, your behavior mirrors that. Identity is the firewall against manipulation. Step 7, document patterns. Keep notes small, precise, factual, manipulative behavior. Gaslighting. Energy drains. Patterns, not drama. Facts win. Facts clarify. Facts empower. Your brain becomes an analytical machine, not a reactionary sponge. Step 8, cognitive cleanup. End the day by draining the bathtub. Remove thoughts that won't serve you. Don't replay, don't overanalyze, write actionable items, remove emotional residue, clear your mind before sleep. You can't fight tomorrow's battles with yesterday's chaos. Step 9, evaluate circle constantly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, assess your inner circle, who elevates you, who drags you down, who aligns with your values and identity. Curate RAL endlessly. Not everyone is replaceable, but some are unnecessary. Low vibration people don't just annoy you, they recalibrate you downward. Step 10, repeat. This isn't a one-time fix. Life will keep sending tests, drama, subtle predators. And guess what? You are more capable than you think. Far more capable, but only if you do the work every day. One boundary, one pause, one tiny step at a time. Shoes by the bed. Consistency builds freedom. A few final truths I want you to hear. You always have a choice, even when it feels like you don't. You don't fix people, you control access, enforce boundaries, and protect your bathtub. People are icebergs. Adapt or leave. Don't try to melt the ocean. Facts win. Feelings don't. Data, not drama. You are not that special, and your pain is not unique. That's the freeing part. You survive. You adapt. You thrive. Now take these steps. Implement tomorrow. One boundary, one pause, one minor recalibration, and over time you'll notice something remarkable. The toxic people shrink in power. Their influence over your energy disappears. Your life becomes quieter, clearer, strategic. Yours. Own your choice. Own your circle. Own your identity. Protect your bathtub. Walk away when necessary. Step in strategically when possible. This is how you deal with toxic people. Smartly, ruthlessly, effectively. You have the map, the method, the mindset. Now go execute.